If you ever hear breathing where it shouldn't be, don't listen twice. That's what I tell myself now. Back then, I didn't listen enough to realize what I was really hearing. My name is Eric. I'm 33 now, and this happened a few years ago in a small apartment just outside Columbus, Ohio. I haven't been sleeping much lately, and I guess talking about it out loud feels like the only thing left that might help. I keep replaying those nights in my head, the sounds, the rhythm, and no matter how much time passes, it still feels like someone's on the other side of that wall, waiting for me to listen. I moved into that place after a breakup. It was cheap, close to work and quiet. First floor, end unit, one bedroom with an old wall heater, thin carpet, and walls that looked like they'd been painted 100 times. The kind of place where you can stand in the kitchen and touch the living room and the hallway at the same time. I liked that it didn't ask anything from me. I could keep it clean, keep the blinds down, and just exist. That was the point. My routine was boring, which helped. I worked at a tire warehouse, came home, showered, microwaved dinner, watched a game, or scrolled my phone, lights out by 11. I kept the TV volume low because I didn't want to be that neighbor. The only sounds I ever heard from the building were pipes settling, the occasional toilet flush, footsteps on the stairs outside. It felt anonymous, safe in that way. The first night I heard it, I honestly thought I was half asleep, half dreaming. It was this faint, steady sound in the bedroom, not loud, slow, like somebody trying to be quiet, but not quite hitting it. I lay there and listened, and it matched my breathing. When I held my breath, it held. When I exhaled, it exhaled. I told myself it was the heater, or wind down the vent, or maybe my own heartbeat bouncing off the wall. I rolled over and forced my eyes closed. Next day at work, I forgot about it. You'd be amazed what you can write off when you have other things to worry about. The second night, the sound was back, a little clearer. Inhale, pause, exhale. I got annoyed then, not scared. I sat up, turned on the lamp, and it quit. I checked the window, locked, checked the heater, cold. I pressed my ear to the wall behind my bed where the headboard was. Nothing. I remember saying, "It's a pipe," out loud to nobody. Third night, I woke up because it felt like someone was timing their breathing to mine on purpose. You know how your body just knows when something's off? My chest felt tight. I reached for my phone. It was 2:17 a.m. I listened. The sound was there, like it had been waiting for me to notice. Inhale, exhale, not me, just outside the rhythm of mine. A beat behind. I tried to follow it. It adjusted. I cleared my throat, and the other sound kept going, like it didn't hear that. I think that's when I got out of bed. I turned on every light. Bathroom, closet. I stood there feeling ridiculous because there's nowhere to hide in a one-bedroom, and the sound had stopped anyway. I checked the front door. Deadbolt was fine, chain was fine. I walked to the bedroom window and slid a finger between the blinds. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a dented Civic I never saw anyone get in or out of. I double-checked the window latch. Solid. I went to work the next day after maybe 3 hours of broken sleep. The guys asked if I was sick. I said allergies. On my break, I Googled breathing sound in walls apartment and got a mix of mold, rodents, raccoons, and it's your own heartbeat amplified through your pillow. I bought earplugs and one of those white noise apps on my phone. That night, I fell asleep to Rain in a Cabin at low volume. It helped for about an hour. Then I woke up because the breathing was louder. I took out one earplug and heard it clearly for the first time. Human pace, human depth, not wind, not a raccoon, close. It felt close enough that if I put my hand on the wall, I'd feel it. I lay there telling myself, don't be dramatic, don't be that guy. I tried to time my breath weird to throw it off. Short inhales, long exhales, random pauses. It matched. When I stopped breathing for a second, it held. When I took a long, slow breath, it took one too, but a hair late, like it was listening and copying. That's the part that stuck with me later. The delay, the fact that it was following. I called the landlord the next morning. I said, "Hey, I think there's something in the wall of my bedroom, maybe an animal." He said maintenance could swing by Friday. It was Tuesday. I said okay because I didn't want to be the crazy tenant. That night, I dragged my mattress into the living room. It felt stupid, but I slept. No breathing. I laughed at myself in the morning for making a big deal out of it. I moved the mattress back to the bedroom, just to prove I wasn't scared of my own place. I woke up at 3:08 to the sound, right behind the headboard. Not loud, not angry, just present. I started shaking before I even sat up. I turned on the lamp and put my ear against the wall. Cool drywall. A faint click somewhere, like a plastic cap settling. The breathing slowed, then stopped. I knocked 3 times. Light knocks. I don't know why. I guess I wanted it to be plumbing. Nothing happened for a second. Then I heard the softest scrape, like fabric against wood, and the tiniest creak that you only hear when everything else is silent. I backed away fast enough to trip over the sheets. I slept in the living room again. In the morning, I looked at the paint around the outlet on that wall and convinced myself it had hairline cracks I hadn't noticed before. I pushed the bed 6 inches away from the wall. I put a strip of painter's tape along the baseboard and marked it with a pen so I could see if anything shifted. That's the level I was at. Tiny experiments, proof for myself. Thursday night, I bought a cheap motion camera online and paid for same-day pickup, the kind that plugs in and points where you want. I set it on my dresser facing the bed as a joke to myself. If a ghost shows up, I'll have content, I said out loud, trying to be funny to an empty room. I felt stupid as I said it because I don't believe in ghosts. I stuck a little sound recorder app on my phone, put the phone on the nightstand, and left it running. The camera had a little green LED I couldn't turn off. I put a piece of tape over it. I lay down with the light off and stared at the dark ceiling for what felt like hours. When the breathing started, it was faint but unmistakable. I didn't move. I just let the recorder run. At some point I drifted. I don't know if I slept or just zoned, but I startled awake when my phone buzzed because of some notification. The sound had stopped. The room felt wrong, like the air was thicker. I checked the time. 2:41. I made myself listen to a few minutes of the recording right then, which is not a smart thing to do in the dark. You could hear my sheets rustle, my own breath, and then beneath it a different pattern. Slower. Not me. Close enough that it picked up on a cheap phone mic. When I breathed in and held, that other rhythm kept going for a second, then paused, then started again. Copying, matching, late by a half beat. Friday, the maintenance guy showed up around 10 a.m. His name was Don. He was friendly in that way people are when they're about to shrug something off. I told him there might be an animal in the wall. He thumped the drywall with his fist and nodded like, "Yep, that's a wall." He said there were return air chases running up the shared wall to the apartments above. He unscrewed the vent cover with a driver he pulled from his pocket and stuck his phone in with the flashlight on. Dust, old insulation, nothing moving. He said he didn't see droppings or nesting. He said, "It's probably the building breathing. These old boxes do that." He laughed. I laughed too, even though I wanted to say, "Buildings don't copy your breathing like they're sitting in the dark with you." I slept in the bedroom that night with the camera going because I didn't want to feel chased out of my own place by a sound. The breathing came back around 2. I listened to it for a while without moving. The camera has a tiny click when it switches to night vision. I heard it do that on its own. Then I heard something I hadn't heard before. A whisper of paper or plastic being touched, like a bag being adjusted, very slowly, carefully. I told myself it was the camera settling. I told myself a lot of things. Saturday afternoon, I looked around that wall like a detective, which I'm not. I pulled the dresser away and ran my fingers along the baseboard. It was snug against the wall, except near the corner, where there was a tiny gap you wouldn't notice unless you were on your knees with a flashlight. The cork there looked newer than the rest, The paint had a slightly different sheen over a rectangle about the size of a shoebox, 4 inches above the baseboard, behind where the dresser usually sat. I pressed on it. The drywall flexed. I measured the rectangle with a tape measure, like that would help. I knocked around and found a difference in sound near that spot, hollow in a way that made my skin go hot. I told myself to wait. I told myself to call someone. I didn't. You make dumb choices when you're tired. I went to the tool aisle at Walmart and bought a stud finder and a cheap drywall saw. When I got back, I shut the bedroom door like I was hiding from the rest of the world. I ran the stud finder along the wall and marked where it beeped. The rectangle I'd noticed fell between the studs. My heart was going too fast to think straight. I put my ear to the wall one more time and heard nothing. The silence felt staged. I cut a small square first, 2 inches by 2 inches, just to look. Drywall dust fell on my hands and stuck to my arms. The smell coming out of that hole was stale and sour, like someone's breath after sleeping with their mouth open. I widened it to the full rectangle, trying to be careful, and the piece came away easy, like it had been cut before and patched in a hurry. Behind it was darkness, not insulation, not a solid stud, just a void running up a foot or two before hitting wood and down to the base plate. In the space right behind where my head had been every night, someone had put things: a pair of folded gym shorts, a plastic water bottle half full, a cheap phone charger, a pack of mints, the cardboard back of a notebook with the spiral torn out. On the wood to the right, I could see smudges, grease from fingers, a little patch of tape residue, skin cells, sweat, whatever. A space big enough for a forearm to slide into. Not big enough for a person, big enough for someone to sit on the other side in whatever chase connected the units and reach through. I stopped moving. I couldn't feel my hands for a second. I remember backing into the dresser and rattling the drawer pulls. I don't scare easy, I don't think, but seeing the water bottle with condensation marks on the inside, that detail, made me lightheaded. It meant recent. It meant not a story I tell myself later. I put my ear to that opening like an idiot, and I heard, far away but too close, a shift. Cloth on wood. A breath in. I dropped the drywall square. It slapped my foot, and I didn't feel it. I called 911. I didn't try to be calm. I told the dispatcher I had a hole in my wall and someone's things were in it, and I could hear breathing. I remember saying breathing 3 times. She told me to step outside, wait for officers, and not touch anything. I grabbed my keys and left. In the parking lot, I stood behind my car so I could see my front door. My hands were shaking enough that I dropped the keys twice, trying to get them into my pocket. 2 officers came, then a third with maintenance. The landlord showed up too, looking pale and annoyed. The cops went inside first. They looked at the hole and then at me like I was either a prank or a mess. One of them, a woman with her hair pulled back tight, shone her light into the space and whistled low. "Somebody's been enjoying your company," she said, and I almost threw up. They asked if I wanted to stay outside. I said yes. They went next door to the vacant unit on the other side of that wall. I didn't know it was vacant. I'd never seen anyone go in or out. Maintenance opened it with a master key. I watched them go in, lights on. A minute later, the female officer shouted. Then there was this scramble sound, boots on old laminate, and a body hitting something. 2 officers dragged a man out into the hallway. He wasn't fighting. He looked half asleep and confused, like a raccoon pulled out of a trash can. He was older than me, thin with greasy hair, wearing 2 sweaters even though it wasn't cold. He had no shoes on. His socks were black on the bottom, like he'd been walking on dirty floors for a long time. He kept saying, "I didn't go in, I didn't go in, I didn't go in," over and over, and they cuffed him and sat him on the curb. I remember the way he stared at my window, not at me, at the glass, like he was trying to listen through it. Inside the empty unit, the officers found where the wall had been cut behind the bed line. The same size rectangle as mine, carefully patched and painted. Behind that panel, the chase was bigger, a weird cavity left from a remodel years ago where the return air used to be. Enough room for someone to sit curled up, knees to chest, in the dark. It ran down to my wall and up to the second floor. Whoever he was had carved a little perch out of a two-brace or brace that shouldn't have been load-bearing anymore. There were more things in there: a pack of instant oatmeal, a spoon, 2 empty water bottles, a small notebook without the cover, and a pair of earplugs. The female officer held up the notebook like she regretted touching it. The first page had times written on it. 1:38, 2:10, 3:05, check marks next to some. Underneath, he leaves at 7:15. My stomach turned because that was my schedule. I always left at 7:15 to beat traffic. They found a cheap phone in the guy's pocket when they searched him, the kind you load with cash, no service. But it had voice memos. The officer hit play and you could hear muffled breathing for a long time. Then my phone buzzing at 2:41 a.m. Then my voice, quiet. It's probably nothing. I recognized my voice from that night and felt like I was watching myself from across a parking lot. I didn't want to hear more. They stopped it anyway. The man didn't have ID. He said he wasn't in my apartment. He said he only listened. He said he'd been checking vents. None of it made sense. He wasn't homeless at first glance. The clothes were dirty, but layered like he'd been living somewhere inside, protected from the weather. Maintenance said the unit next door had been vacant for 3 weeks after a tenant left in a hurry. No forwarding address. No sign anyone had broken the locks, but someone had a key or knew where to push on old wood to make it give. The police asked me a lot of questions I didn't answer well. Did I ever see him around? Did I notice anything missing? Did I ever feel like I wasn't alone? That last one made me laugh in a way that didn't sound like me. The landlord kept saying things like, "This is the first time we've had an issue like this," which made me wonder about the second and third times. They took the man away. They covered the opening with cardboard until maintenance could patch it properly. They told me to spend the night elsewhere if I could. I said I would. I stayed at a co-worker's place on his couch, staring at his ceiling fan until morning. Every sound was a footstep. Every step was someone timing their breath to mine. I called my parents and told them I needed somewhere to crash for a week. I took the next day off work and moved my stuff into a storage unit. I kept the mattress because it was new and I couldn't afford another. I threw away the pillow I'd been sleeping on. I know that's irrational, but I couldn't look at it without thinking of that space behind my head. Maintenance patched the hole in the days after, properly this time, with screws and joint compound, and replaced the vent covers with ones that had tamper-proof screws. The landlord offered me a different unit, same building, no extra charge. I wanted to ask him who else was in the walls, but I didn't. I declined and ended my lease early. He didn't fight me on it, which told me something. It took a while to get the report about the guy. He had a record for trespassing and a note in whatever system they use that he wasn't violent. He'd been picked up before for sleeping in basements of old buildings downtown, in those weird spaces nobody uses but still exist. He wasn't charged with anything big this time either. Just unlawful entry, property damage. No one wanted to label it anything uglier on paper. But there were things in the notebook that matched my schedule, and the scribbles on the inside of the wooden brace had dates. And on one of those dates, I remember waking up with the feeling I get when I realize my phone isn't DT on the nightstand, even though I put it there. I found it on the floor the next morning. I told myself I must have knocked it off in my sleep. I don't let myself think about other explanations for that night. I keep running it back, the way the breathing lagged mine by half a beat, like someone was trying not to be caught copying, the plastic crinkle when I moved, the water bottle in the wall with the little dents on the side where a thumb had worried it over and over. I go over all the ways I dismissed it. I get stuck on the part where I moved the mattress out to the living room and slept like a baby, and then moved it back to prove I wasn't scared. It feels like I did a trust fall with the wrong person waiting behind me. People ask what the worst part was. It wasn't the hole. It wasn't seeing the guy in cuffs staring at my window like a dog, listening under a closed door. It was the normal things. The gum wrapper in the cavity, the notebook lines pressed hard by someone who wanted the ink to show for years. The earplugs. He brought earplugs. That means there were times when he didn't want to hear me, and times when he did. He decided. That's the part that gets under your skin. I sleep with the bed in the center of the room now, 3 feet from any wall. It looks ridiculous. I keep a fan on because silence makes me think about someone else choosing to be silent with me. I check the baseboards wherever I go. I run my fingers along paint looking for seams. I can't fall asleep facing the wall anymore. Anywhere. Hotels are the worst. New walls you haven't tested feel like strangers. If there's a vent near the bed, I move the bed. I've done that in 3 Airbnb S and 1 guest room at my cousin S place. I don't explain. I just do it and say I sleep better that way. Sometimes I hear my own breathing when I'm almost asleep, and my whole body locks up because for a second it sounds like someone else deciding to inhale after I do. I sit up and count. In 2, 3, out 2, 3. I touch the wall with the back of my hand like it'll tell me something. It doesn't. The wall doesn't care. It never did. It's wood and dust and space, and I lived on one side of it and someone else lived in it. I haven't been back to that building. I drove by once during the day in a loop that I told myself was on my way somewhere else. The blinds in my old unit were tilted open a little. A plant was in the window that wasn't mine. The dented Civic was gone. A new car I didn't recognize sat there, sun glinting off the windshield. I didn't get out. I didn't look long. I left. You make choices about what your head can survive. Mine can't handle seeing someone else's bed against that wall. I know the version of this story people want to hear. He was in the wall for months, watching me, planning something. I don't know that. I only know what I heard, what I found, what they pulled him out of. I know the notebook had days marked I can place on a calendar. I know he had my schedule. I know he had earplugs. I know he came close enough to learn the sound of my sleep and decided to match it, like a kid trying to walk in step with a stranger, thinking they won't notice. I'm not telling this to scare anyone into ripping their walls open. I'm telling it to explain why I sleep with the lights low and a fan on, and the bed away from the edges. Why I check vents, why I step back when a room is too quiet. This is the part you don't see when you scroll past a headline about trespass. There's a person who had to listen to someone practice being near them. That's all I can say without getting lost in it again. I wish I could forget, but I can't. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Please like, share and subscribe to Mr. Ebon for more real horror stories like this. Be careful out there. You never know who's listening through the wall.